Okay, welcome guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I have Diane Flores here, and my name is Camy Kennedy. I'm diet recovery coach and confidence coach. And Diane, I asked her to send over a little blurb about herself. I don't want to get it wrong. I want to make sure I send you to the right website. So she's from livingthegoddesslife.com, and she teaches women how to feel fit, sexy, and confident no matter where they are in their fitness journey. So thank you so much, Diane, for hopping on this call with me today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here, Camy. I love you to pieces, and I think we're going to have a great time.
I love it. We are. We totally are. And just for anybody who's watching, the way that we vibe is totally like we're just going to have our conversation. Like, I have a loosely structured plan, but her and I are just we're going to do what we want because we're rule breakers. We're just going to see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the reason I did this call is because I'm running a program called The Better Method. It's an 8-week online nutrition and lifestyle course. And each week I'm having an expert in the field of balance or training or energy come in and kind of give their perspective. So I have you as my expert today. So I want to just first start off. You
Awesome.
give me a story about you. So tell me about you. Take it away. I want people to get to know you.
Okay. Well, I started it started back when I started having children and ballooned up to 200 pounds after having babies. So that's sort of where that fits into the whole fitness and nutrition piece of this puzzle. I was obsessed with anything and everything fitness. So I just was like, I saw girls in magazines and I just bought every Oxygen magazine, every Muscle and Fitness, anything I could possibly get my hands on. And I would rip out things in magazines and go try them at the gym. And I was kind of all over the place, but I didn't come from a healthy family. I didn't have, anyone to like really role model or look up to as a role model. So it was sort of just something I always aspired to. And especially when I would read articles about women who, were moms and they had kids. And I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And so I just knew in some way, shape, or form that I was going to someday get on stage. And that was sort of my ultimate goal was, I want to be on stage. I want to be a figure competitor. I don't know how, when, or where it's going to happen, but I'm definitely going to make it happen. So, short story long, I ended up getting into the medical field, did that for a while. And then I always held a second job, which was at Gold's Gym in the daycare. And then I would get free daycare and I had free membership and I could work out. And it was great because I could be there as much as I wanted. My kids were having fun in the daycare. And eventually I would try to contest prep on my own. So I remember not even having my 10-year-old at the time. I just had my 2 youngest. And so I would look at the diet and I'd be like, oh yeah, it's just workout. Like I just need to work out, I just need to keep working out. Mm-hmm. And then I would count calories and I busted out food journals from way back when. And like, it's hilarious to look at my food journals because it's like 1,000 calories today. And it's like Michelob Ultra, a corn dog, it's like all this ridiculous stuff. And I'm like, yeah, totally terrible. But I ended up, falling in love with exercise and fitness. And a whole nother story for another webinar maybe is that I own a pole dance studio. And eventually, before I opened up a pole dance studio, I ended up dropping a bunch of weight and feeling better about myself, opened up a pole dance studio, started getting, feeling more confident, feeling like I could, actually accomplish fitness things at that point. Scoured out a coach here in my town that did contest prep. He was the only one. I had tried some online stuff and it was like I needed a little more one-on-one time with a personal trainer because I wasn't really confident in the gym. So once I did that, I remember, I'll never forget walking into his supplement store and saying, I want to contest prep. I want to compete. And he's like, yeah, you and the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, but I really want to. Can you sign me up? And he's like, listen, I don't take anyone seriously unless you've been training with me for a year. So start training with me 3 times a week for a year and we'll see what you got. And I signed up 2 of my friends and we did it together because I was super nervous. And they fell off after 3 months. And I'm like, hell no, I'm doing this. I don't care. I don't care what it takes. So I trained with him for a year, and sure enough, he handed me my first competition diet. And I looked at it, and I remember looking at this piece of paper and going, well, there's no wine on here. And he's like, yeah, you have to stop drinking alcohol. I'm like, oh, okay. So I did it. I mean, he literally mapped it out for me and gave me my little piece of paper, and I literally ate what was on this piece of paper, nothing else. Got on stage 3 times with him, and then eventually switched to bikini division, did that for 4 more times. And now I've just fine-tuned it into a realistic sort of approach for my clients. And I also coach girls to get on stage now too. So that was a very long story, but that's kind of like in a nutshell where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple pieces in there that I'm going to pull out and kind of ask some questions about. So first of all, I have a lot of people, like you and I come from similar worlds. I never competed, but I know you did, and we know a lot of people who did. But for those who don't come from that world, give me an idea. What is this? What is competing? What is it? Give us like the basic, what it takes, what it is, and what it requires.
Okay. So, well, I can tell you when I started from the outside looking in, before I really knew what I was getting myself into, I just knew that I wanted to see my body take over a complete transformation. So it's a bodybuilding competition. So typically you should have some weight training under your belt. You should have a good solid foundation. And you train, it just depending, everybody's going to start at a different spot. But it definitely does require you to get in the gym to build some muscle. It's not, there's different divisions. So I started with the figure competition, which is definitely more muscular. You want to carry more muscle tone. A lot leaner than the bikini division. The bikini division is a little curvier. They want more glutes, a tiny waist. And, there's a lot of different schools of thought for these competitions. Anyone can do them. They don't weigh you and say, okay, you can only compete if you only weigh this much. But the thing that you do have to keep in mind is when you do a fitness or a figure competition, a bikini competition, that you're going up against women of all different ages, shapes, sizes, conditioning, and it's a very subjective sport. And that is where it becomes extremely challenging. At the end of the day, I tell my clients all the time, you look fantastic. I know how hard you've been working. I know how long we've been training together to put muscle on or to lean out and whatnot. But when you arrive there, it depends on who shows up. It depends on who's in the lineup, who's in better condition than you are, who has leaner abs, who's more striated. It's just like a lot of different variables. There are, politics can be involved as well. So that's a whole nother subject. But it's a blessing and a curse. And I love it because it would always push me to be better for myself. And I was always doing it to push myself to that next level, to see how much I could transform my body. It became a little addictive at a certain point. But I try to really nail it into the girls' brains. I have a couple of my clients right now that are on, is that when you stand up there and, let's say that it's narrowed down to 2 different girls, and the judges are there looking at you, and you're both, it's a toss up. Like, you're both in incredible shape. It's like, how do you know who's first and who's second? Let's say you're a blonde and the other girls are brunette. If the judges like blondes, well, then the blonde's winning that day. I mean, there's really no evident, clear, concise who's first, who's second. It's literally subjective. It's not like running a marathon or, any sort of like sports activity where it's very evident who's first and second place. It's completely in the eye of the beholder. So that's kind of where it gets very frustrating. And I did take a hiatus from coaching for a while because I was extremely upset. Like, I was just like, I can't condone this for women. I'm very much like, don't compare yourself to other women. That's just kind of my MO. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't have women doing it the wrong way, starving themselves to the stage. I felt an obligation to coach women the right way, the healthy way, around their mindset, around, just being in it for themselves and not really focusing so much on the trophy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that. I like that. And that kind of leads us in a little bit to the balance, because I know you kind of said a little bit in there that it got, for you personally, it got a little bit extreme. It got a little bit competitive. So at that point, you probably wouldn't have considered yourself balanced. So tell me what happened after time. And then, and like seeing you, right? I saw your competition photos, and your competition photos and your photo shoot looks very different than you now. So I'd like to know two questions.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I'd like to know two questions. Number one, do you see yourself being more balanced now? And then I want to know about body image, because I have a similar story to where my body was a certain way. Now it's a certain way. And which one you like yourself better in, and how mentally you kind of dealt with that. So I want to dive in deep, and I'll just let you take it from here.
Oh my God. That's so juicy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so as much as I highly respected my first coach, loved him like a brother. He was amazing. He was sort of over it. Like, he had been doing it for well over 20 years, and he was very set in his ways, very black and white. So with my figure competitions, like, I was one of those very diligent students. Like, he handed me the piece of paper and said, you literally eat what is on this piece of paper for XYZ amount of weeks and nothing else. So like, nothing else would go into my mouth except for tilapia, asparagus, sweet potatoes or rice, whatever I was on for the cycle or whatever. And there was no variety. So it was like, you know, my family was like, you can't go here. I'm like, yeah, I can go, but I got to take my food. And so I would take my food in my Tupperware, and I'd be sitting there, and there's, you know, this Mexican restaurant by our house, and my kids love going there. And I would be so mad, like, the whole time. I'd be sitting there eating my food, watching my family eat chips and salsa. And like, at the time, my husband, so my ex-husband's like eating his plate full of like enchiladas, beans and rice and everything. And here I am with like chicken breast, broccoli, and like asparagus or whatever, or, you know, rice. So, it was a really hard time on my family. It was, bodybuilding and, you know, that whole sport can be very selfish if you let it be. So you become like the center of your own universe. I equate it to like having a newborn baby. Like, when does the baby got to eat? When does the baby got to sleep? When does the baby's got to train, you know? And, you know, although like the exterior looked like, oh my gosh, she's got such a great body. You know, she must have this perfect life and white picket fence and everything. Like, behind closed doors, like, my husband and I were like ready to kill each other. I had no sex drive. Like, my family was like, oh, she's on edge. You know, I was always super on edge, and just, you know, through my figure competitions, I didn't have any, I didn't cheat, if that makes any sense. So like, the first one, I didn't cheat. He said like, eat this. And I said, okay. As we started getting closer to contest, I had lost my period for a number of months. I had got so lean, and then I was like, I need something. So my cheat at that point was like a tablespoon of almond butter. And so my sister and I joke, when she went and watched me at my first competition, she's like, we're going to name this trophy AB for almond butter, because your coach didn't put it on your plan, but you won. And we're just going to say her name is AB. So, so it was very just like, you know, my sister's like, really, Diane, you had a tablespoon of almond butter. You didn't have like French fries or anything. I'm like, yeah, but it's not on the plan. Like, I would like freak out, you know?
Yeah.
So it was not balanced. Okay. My bikini coach, he was an online coach. I'd never met him. I worked with him through, the internet and everything. He was a little bit better, still pretty much very black and white. Like, this is what I want you to eat. This is your meal plan. As we grew together in coaching, he allowed me to work with macros at a certain point, and that's when the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, okay, I get this. I started studying if it fits your macros. I started studying different complex carbohydrates and like what I could swap out. And so the education, I wanted to just learn, because I wanted to just be better, not only for myself, but like for my clients as well when I was coaching them. Mm-hmm. So compared to now, let me move forward in that is, my body is completely different. I mean, my stage, you know, I hate to talk about the number on the scale, because, even when I was competing, I was always way heavier than other girls in in my class. I was always way heavier. I just have denser muscle. I've been training for a lot longer. It's just, it is what it is. So my figure competing days, I'd step on stage between 135 and 138, I think, for the very first competition I did. And my bikini contest, the most recent ones I did, I think my scale weight at the end there, I hit 129. And for reference, the last time I had weighed 129 pounds was probably in 5th grade. Yeah. So in my adult life, I had never been in the 120s, 130s were even really hard for me to maintain. So, I was always usually 140-ish around there. And now, like, I'm at a point where I'm super comfortable in my skin. I feel amazing. I feel strong. Like, my goals are different. I still sometimes look back and I think I want to compete. But I'm so passionate about coaching women, and I know how selfish and self-centered I get in it. Like, and when I'm in it, I'm in it. There's no like half-assing. So I know, like, when I'm in it, I become the center of my universe, and I'm just not in a position where I want to do that right now. I rather spend focus time on my clients, and enjoy my training in other ways. And,
yeah,
it's a chapter. I mean, my best friend is competing too, and I'm coaching her, and she's like, I don't think I have it in me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and
it's fun. And when I go watch them, yeah. And I go watch them and I'm like, man, I would love to do that. And honestly, Camy, I think because of what I've gone through over the last 5 years with competing and all that back and forth, I feel like I'd be in a much better position mentally to do it now than I would have even a year ago or 2 years ago. And I'm certain I could do it without any massive like repercussions of like binge eating or any of that, because now I know how to work with macros and, all that. But I just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it may happen when I'm 60.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal.
I'll be that woman.
Yeah. No, I like that. Cause then your class, the class is smaller anyway. So you'll be good.
I'll win.
Yeah. So a couple things I'll dig out of this. I want to dig into being fit, sexy, and confident before you're at your fitness goals. So for example, if you're like how I was, so when I was at my leanest, and again, we'll just say 20 pounds lighter than I am right now, I still thought I was fat because at least competition, you always want to, I need my shoulders bigger. I need my butt better. Like, you just always have an idea of what needs to be better. Meanwhile, I'm sure you have this too. When you look back at pictures, you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? I look great. But now, like, I know you have we're the same. Like, I know you have a better head on your shoulders now, probably, than what you did when you competed. So tell me, like, right now, to the women who are on here who are like, yeah, I wish I had abs. Like, yeah, I wish I like could drop 10 pounds. Like, let's talk to them right now where they're at and tell me how they can become confident where they're at right now.
That's a juicy one. Well, the thing is that I think, and that's the curse. That's the curse of one of the downsides to this whole, the competition scene is that you're comparing yourself up against other women. So there's always that comparison trap. I've done it too. I absolutely, I've often compared myself to my previous self. Like, every competition that would come, I'd be like, oh, I got to get leaner. I got to look better. And it was just always this, this constant fight again about trying to look better. And I can tell you that, coming off of a contest, post competition, you go through what they call like competition blues. And you're just like, you expect that you're going to look like you did when you did on stage, like afterwards. Like, I know every single show that I did, I was like, oh, I can handle this. I'm going to keep doing, 6 days of cardio for 40 minutes and weight train 4 times a week and eat, 1,100 calories or whatever. And it's just not realistic. It took me well over a year to finally get a rhythm with like my eating, to stop binge eating and start realizing like, it's like, it's like expecting like a football player to be in like peak shape all the time. Like there are seasons for that, you know, and there's seasons for your body. And sometimes you're 5 pounds heavier and sometimes you're 5 pounds leaner. And it's really about not being a slave to the scale, not letting that dictate how your day is going to go, understanding that you're human. Perfection is overrated. Loving the skin that you're in. You know, I always say, no mistakes. There's no mistakes. God didn't make you, you know, like you are perfectly imperfect. And the more that you can embrace that and realize that, you know, like, you know, I always have hated my nose. I've always, you know, there's always things that I want to pick apart, but there's 100 other things now that I can find that I truly love. So I really want people to focus on the positives and, not comparing yourself to your fellow goddess. Like, you know, she's got her, you know, my girlfriend and I always have this conversation. Like, I want her upper body. She wants my lower body. Like, what is this weird science? You know, like we can't, it's not like, you know, it's just like, you are what you are. And it's like the more that you can come to accept that and love it and appreciate your flaws and find, the positive in everything, the easier it is. And it's really a lot of self-talk, a lot of self-love, a lot of, you know, self-forgiveness and empathy with yourself. And it's a process, but it's taken some time, I know for sure for me, especially, you know, looking back, and I'm certainly not at my leanest right now, looking back at my competition days and going, I was 129 there and I'm 150 now. Like, ooh, you know, it's about 20 pounds. But again, that's absolutely unrealistic. And, you know, I'm loving life right now. I'm loving the curves. I'm loving the strength. And, you know, could I be 10 pounds lighter? Sure, I could. But do I want to sacrifice? And I wanted to get into that too. I know we were talking about, you know, some diet questions, but am I willing to sacrifice those things just to have, you know, shredded abs? Not really. I'm not.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. And so I wanted to just put in a couple mindset pieces and then we'll move on to the diet stuff. But so what I did, and you might have some rules at your studio, because I know that you coach women in like a pole fitness studio. And at least when I started with my body image stuff, it was me and my best friend. We were the same way. Like she loved my legs because they were big. And I was like, stop calling my legs big, like get out of here. And I like wanted her legs because her legs were small. And so we'd have this argument, but I decided, this must have been like 6 years ago, we made up a rule. It was like when we're together, we were not allowed to say anything negative about our bodies. And if we did, the other person would have to call us out and say like, no, like just stop talking. Because women really like to get in this thing of like, oh, well, I hate my hair and oh, my ass is so big. Like they like to get into this whole thing. So I'm wondering, do you have any rules at your studio that's like no negativity, like you're not allowed to talk negative or anything? Do you have
that? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I always tell the girls, like, you know, when they come in, I'm like, leave your day at the door. Okay. All those labels that you give yourself, you know, a mom, manager, any negative crap that's gone on throughout the day, I want you to Control Alt Delete before you step through the door and know that this is your space. This is your space to love your body. This is your space to stop the comparison with the other goddesses that are here. It's a super tight-knit community. I love the women at my studio. I mean, I've had women coming for 7 years. I mean, since I very first started in Turlock, in the city, the neighboring city. But yeah, I mean, we used to have a hater jar, and it was like anytime you made a negative comment about yourself, it was like you had to put $1 in the jar. And
that's good.
We used to be near a Mexican restaurant at the time at my first studio. And it was like, okay, go get $1 for the hater jar. And so they'd put $1 in the hater jar, and it was like, we would go have margaritas. So that was like the joke, on everybody's like hateful comments about their bodies. So, we're no longer near that Mexican studio, so we couldn't do the hater jar thing anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's constantly, we're constantly, embedding it in their minds about, loving the skin they're in, being here. Don't love yourself like 10 pounds from now. Time is going to pass anyways. Why not enjoy life where you are right now? Because ultimately, this sounds morbid, but I don't want to be laying in my deathbed someday and going, man, I really wish I would have done pole dancing but I didn't want to because I was 15 pounds heavier. Like, really? No. You're going to be kicking yourself that you didn't try, and put yourself out there for different activities or the stuff that's on your bucket list sooner, because, who knows when that's going to happen. And I don't want to die with any regrets. And I just want to make sure that everything that I have on my radar to try and to test out is going to get done before, no matter what shape or size I'm in. I don't want that to be the deciding factor.
That is so good. I love that so much. So I want to segue into, so this whole picture, what I wanted to do, because the title of this webinar is called, Is Being Balanced Sexy? And I think that people think the cover of Oxygen magazine sexy, and people on a figure stage is sexy, and bikini competitions is sexy, but they don't see the crap that goes on behind the scenes. So I wanted to kind of paint a picture of that's what that is. And here's this, I call this my walking around body. This is the body that I can live in every day. And I ate brownies this weekend, and I had a hard root beer I drank this weekend. That's what I want. So I want people to come to my side, which is the balanced side. And I know you're on that as well. So let's dive into, I want you to touch base briefly. I want baby steps on this whole macro thing, because we're just learning about this in the Better Method. And I want to know your take on it, and kind of just give me the brief summary of what it is, and then why it works well for you, and who you think it would work well for.
Okay. I'll start with that. So I think counting macros is a good way to start when you're, okay, so let me back up. So when you're very first starting, baby steps, I think if you have no idea what eating healthy is, you're isn't pasta healthy? Or it's whole wheat, you have no clue. I think meal plans are a great guide. So you can look at it and go, oh, okay. So that's what a balanced macronutrient breakfast is. If my goal is lean, sexy muscle, reducing fat, keeping body fat low, and, feeling sustained, energy wise, and a holistic perspective, just a lifestyle basic, right? Just completely scratching the surface with eating clean. I think that's great. And I start a lot of clients off like that. I have a whole ebook program that's based on that. It's let's start from scratch. And it works really well for people who just maybe eat a lot of fast food or quote unquote junk food or whatever. I think that's great to get them started. Now, once they start seeing some wins with that, okay, I get the concepts. I understand what protein is. I understand what healthy fats are. I understand what complex carbohydrates are, micronutrients are my veggies. I get the concepts. Maybe you don't know everything, but you understand the umbrella principles. I think that, and you're okay, maybe you've hit a plateau and you're ready to go to the next level. You really want to dial in your physique. You want to see some better results rather than just eating kind of loosey-goosey all over the place, which is what kind of a lot of people do. Then getting a little more dialed in with counting your macros is a great way to see, oh, wow, I thought I was eating, because I've done so much research and a lot of people think they're eating a certain amount and they're eating 1,000 calories over that. And it's really, can mess with you if you're training hard and you're well, I eat good. I hear that a lot. Well, I eat really well. I eat really healthy, But let's talk about your portion sizes. Let's talk about how much healthy food, because too much of anything is not good for you. So too much sweet potatoes, you're going to gain weight. With the exception of the rules probably being vegetables, fibrous veggies, broccoli and asparagus, something like that. But too much protein is not good. Too much healthy fat is not good. And so and I talk about this with my coaching group, is that we tend to give clean eating foods a halo. They're this angelic little food that I can eat tons of because it's, it's gluten-free, or it's a healthy fat, or it's coconut oil or whatever. So I think when you got the concepts down, I think counting macros then gives you a realistic set point where you're oh crap, okay, well, I haven't been measuring my peanut butter and I've been eating 3 tablespoons, which is, we know how easy that is to do peanut butter. That's just one of my crutches. P.S. That's one that I would totally overdo. But so it's a good way to do it. And, you know, I think when it becomes really obsessive, is when you need to take a step back and go like, okay, am I competing, or, you know, like, what am I doing here? I'm getting a little too wrapped up in this, and I'm living and dying and breathing by these numbers. That's when it becomes like, okay, you need to take a step back, maybe take a break from the counting for a little bit, trust yourself, and see how that goes, and then maybe come back and reevaluate after a while.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. And I'm going to break it down just for anybody who's literally super brand new. Because I can remember, I was like, what's a macro? So macros are macronutrients, carbs, fats, and protein. I just want to throw it out there for anybody who's like, I don't want to raise my hand and ask what that is, but it's the food that we eat. So it's the ratio of foods that we eat. Because in the beginning, I started with clean eating, and we'll break that down in a second because some people probably don't know what clean eating is either. But I wanted to mention a tool that I use because, again, my whole thing is rule breaker. Let's break the rules. And I know yours is Diet Rebel, so we're very similar. But I use a hashtag instead of if it fits your macros. I use if it fits your lifestyle goals, which is pretty much exactly what you said. So if your goal is to get super shredded and lean, then you will have to look at your macros more closely. If your goal is to eat waffles and frozen yogurt, which is me, and like have a decent body, but not like super low body fat, then you'll go to that route. So I ask women just to like, what's important to you? Like, is wine important to you every night?
Right.
Because if it is, your body, you'll have to make a sacrifice somewhere, you know? So I think that's good. So let's go into clean eating then. Yeah. You mentioned that briefly. What's clean eating and who is that for?
So it's such a loose word now. And I think there's so many people that are putting their spins on it. I'd say by my definition is, you know, lean sources of protein. You can go into, you know, like I subscribed to the Clean Eating magazine for well over a year, and I just kind of dug through that and would read their articles. You know, you can go as far as like grass-fed, organic, dairy, you know, like there's different labels to add on to the umbrella of clean eating. But for basics, it's going to be, you know, staying away from deep fried fatty foods, you know, overly processed stuff that's coming in boxes and packaged and things that have lots of sugar in them. So, I mean, my basic definition is going to fall under what I call the threesome. Okay. Protein, carbs, and fat. And then the fourth sum is the micronutrients. So lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat pastas, things like that. And then healthy fats, you know, that you can get from like salmon, coconut oil, peanut butter, almond butter, macadamia nuts, fish oils, things like that. So it's really not that complicated. I think we overcomplicate it and trying to get way, way too complicated. But when you strip it down, it's literally those four things. I mean, the three core, you know, proteins, carbs, and fats, and then, you know, micronutrients, obviously delivering all your vitamins. So that's, I mean, as simple as it can get, at least I think for me. But like I said, you can always add in those extra layers of clean eating, you know, organic, grass-fed, free range, that kind of stuff that takes it to the next level. And I say that that's kind of like a epic style of like clean eating. That's like going to the extremes. Yeah. But we need to move the big rocks and not worry on the small rocks so much. So the big rocks being like, let's get those main components nailed down. And then if you want to start playing around with organic and grass fed and things like that, then that's sort of a bonus at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So to summarize, basically clean eating is like less processed, doesn't have extra ingredients in it. Just like whole foods that you can eat. I think that's a good basics. And then of course you can get into better quality foods. But like you said, if you're in McDonald's right now, just eat a piece of chicken. Like that's where we're at. If that's where you're at, that's where you're at. Yeah. So
yeah, for sure.
And there's going to be a giveaway. I want you guys to stay to the end too, because Diane's going to be giving us a giveaway. Speaking of fast food. And I'll let you guys know that at the end, but I wanted to get into, you briefly talked about binging, and I've done it too. I'll tell my story briefly real quick. When I was cutting my fat super, super low and my calories low and doing so much cardio because I was trying to compete, and I never competed. I just tried to compete like a million times, like 5 times. I ate 7 protein bars, and it was the company I was working for at the time, and the protein bars were higher in fat. And I ate one, and I was like, oh, that was good. I ate another one. By the time I looked over, there was just a pile of like protein bar wrappers, and I was like, what just happened? I literally I added it up. I ate 92 grams of fat in that one like binge cycle, but I literally felt like I blacked out and I didn't know what happened, and I like woke up and there was just like wrappers everywhere. So tell me about your experience. I'm sure you have something like it.
Oh, girlfriend. Yes. I like to say that I went through all this stuff, with my competing, and I mean, let's just be real. It was an eating disorder. I mean, it literally was disordered eating. With my first coach specifically, my second coach, not so much, but after each show I'd finish, and I just remember when I had followed the meal plan to such a degree with my first coach that I ended up peaking for my figure show 6 weeks early. Okay. So imagine for, 6 weeks, he had to maintain me because I was shredded. So, rather than say, let me give you more food, he would say, stay on the meal plan. And then I want you to have a 6-hour cheat window. Okay. So I'll never forget my very first cheat window. I called my sister and I was like, yo, I get 6 hours to eat whatever the heck I want. Now, mind you, I had cleaned up my diet and I was eating whole foods for this entire prep. And I started a 16-week shred prep. So I'd been working with him and building muscle for about a year. And then I started a 16-week shred. And, I peaked at 10 weeks. So I think I had done like 1 or 2 tablespoons of peanut butter or almond butter here and there. But then when he says, you got 6 hours to eat whatever you want, I go, let's go. I got 6 hours. We go to Walmart. I load up my cart. I bought a waffle maker. I bought Doritos. Everything that I could possibly ever want and had been fantasizing of. I mean, I would lay in bed on Pinterest and I would just be pinning food porn like all night long, to the point where I would the phone would fall on my face and I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Like, I'm so dying so I got so sick, needless to say, my cheat meal, I think I got about 2 hours in and I was like rolling around with just like this terrible gut ache, managed to recover after a couple hours. And I'm like, I want a margarita. Let's go hit up the Mexican restaurant that's by my house. We're going. I need chips and salsa right now. Let's go. We flew over there. I mean, I was like literally down to the minutes of my 6-hour eating window and I am shoving food in my mouth. So it went on like that. And I think like the next time I got a cheat window was like 4 hours. And then it gradually got to like nothing once we got up to competition. And then after that competition, I remember literally, I don't know if you've heard of Slutty Brownies. Have you heard of those?
Oh, good.
Okay. Don't Google that. Okay. It's very pornographic. No. So it's, this was one of my pins on Pinterest, right? So I'm like, I want this after my show. Like I told my best friend, I said, I want to be walking off that stage and I want a Slutty Brownie in my hand, eating it as I'm walking off the stage. And she's like, done deal. So it's like the bottom layer is cookie dough, and then you put Oreo cookies, and then you pour brownie batter over the top and you bake it. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Best thing it'll like rocks your face off. Like talk about overly processed sugar coma.
Yeah.
So I ate half of that pan. I ate half of a 13x9 pan of brownies right after my show. After I had then had Cheesecake Factory, and like I went bananas, like I went crazy, and it was literally like, and he didn't tell me what to do after, so I was just like, I don't know what to do, like I'm just gonna eat everything. So I literally just started eating everything. I mean, I gained 15 pounds back right away that very first week.
Wow.
And of course a lot of it was water weight, sodium. I mean, my ankles were swollen and my joints hurt, my stomach was a wreck. And it was bad. And then a lot of times for figure competitors, they were like, well, the only way to fix this is for me to do another contest, And so that's what I would do is I would like, I need to do another contest to fix all the damage I did from binging from the previous contest. So, you know, eventually, I kind of like healed from that. And then I signed up and did bikini competitions and worked with that coach. And, in between my bikini shows, I had a couple episodes, quite a few episodes where my family would go to bed and I'd be down in the pantry. We had like a walk-in pantry at this house we were living in. And I'd be literally in there with a spoon of Nutella. And I'd be like knuckle deep in Nutella, just like eating. And like my kids are like, Mom. And I'm like, yes. You know, I mean, it's funny now and I can laugh about it now, but it would be Nutella or peanut butter or whatever I could get my hands on. And then it was like eating just random stupid stuff, like my son's goldfish crackers, you know, because I'm like, oh, I can have this now. I'm not dieting. And it was crazy. So yeah, I mean, I have plenty of stories, trust me, but
how do you regain balance after that? And so here's my thing. You and I now, I think, have a pretty healthy relationship with food in terms of I did eat brownies this weekend. And I don't feel guilty about it, but I can admit that I had too many. Like, I'm like, well, I had a lot of brownies this weekend, but like, it wasn't, I was cognizant of what I was doing. I wasn't hiding. And like, I'm telling him like, yeah, guys,
right.
Eat a whole pan of brownies in 2 days. Like that's what happened. But I'm more balanced with it and I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like I need to go work out for 3 hours. So when did you learn how to get balanced and stop the binges? Because what I find now is that because I can have anything I want whenever I want, I don't want it that much. But as soon as you tell yourself you can't have it, you obsess over it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. It takes the second, and it's what I try to really drive home for my clients. Like the second you say, I can't have that, or I'm on a diet, what does your brain do? You immediately want what you can't have. So the path was a bumpy one. There was, for me, it was like, there was patches of like not having binges, for a month or two. And then I'd lose my crap and I'd be like back at it again, and it kind of I kind of ping ponged like that for a while. I'd say I haven't had a true binge episode for well over a year now. And it feels great. And I would say that the hugest contributor to that, at least for me, has been being able to work with macros and understanding concept of working with macros, because now I know if I want to have a brownie or if I want to have froyo or if I want to have whatever, I just kind of tailor my day around that. And it can get a little bit obsessive if you're not careful. And again, I'm not competing, so I don't try to go too crazy with that right now. But I've sort of dialed it down to what I call my sanity foods. And a little bit of the strategy comes from Joel Coleman, who's our coach. And a little bit of the strategy comes from, I don't know if you've heard of Brad Pilon, but he's the Eat, Stop, Eat guru on like intermittent fasting and 24-hour fast. So I've kind of blended the two methods and it works well for me. And I try to teach my clients that I give myself usually about 400 to 500 calories of fun foods a day. So are they ideal? No. Is it clean? No. But how I know I'm dieting is if you take those foods away, I'm gonna be like, I'm dieting. I can't have a glass of wine if I want to. Or, my thing is, a bowl of ice cream with some peanut butter on it, or a couple squares of dark chocolate, or, a small bag of popcorn or something. So it's, but I keep the rest of my food really tight the rest of the day, but I like what I eat. I know how I feel if I eat crap. So I love oatmeal and egg whites. Call me crazy, but there's something comforting about it. I enjoy that. I love a big, huge protein smoothie with spinach and protein powder and almond milk and maybe half a banana and some strawberries. Like that feels good. And I know it's supporting my training. So I enjoy that. I feel nourished after I eat that. I know during the day I'm working and it's not really eating isn't a social activity for me during the day. So I'm cool with eating some chicken or chicken salad or whatever, or even if I go out to lunch, because I know later, my week time or when I have my cravings is the PM, and I want to save my froyo or my wine or my glass of wine or whatever for the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, on the weekends, I'm a little bit looser. My boyfriend and I, you know, we do a lot of wine tasting, or we travel, or we go out or whatever. And I stick to my threesome. I always do a protein, you know, carb and a fat usually for my main meal. And then maybe we'll split a dessert or have a glass of wine or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really feels really balanced. It feels really good. It supports my training. I can still train like a beast. I don't feel super slow and bogged down. My hormones are great. I'm having normal periods. You know, sex drive is great. I mean, those are all really important components.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dieting and you're noticing they're out of whack, that's where the balance comes out of play. And you're like, okay, something's amiss here. So it's kind of sort of my strategy and what I try to really get my girls to work on.
That is perfect. And we have a very similar strategy too. I have the same thing that I call I feel better when. So when you make a choice, instead of making a choice based on a diet, like or a meal plan, or I can or I can't have this, you make a choice based on what makes me feel best. And sometimes the freaking yogurt or the wine feels best. And you're like, that's what I'm doing. I want that. But usually your body makes the choice for you and you're like, oh man, it would be so much better if I had a protein shake right now. And you end up having it in I feel so much better now that I haven't had it. And the same thing, like with the brownies I had this weekend, I was launching a program last weekend. So I was like, I'm eating the freaking brownies because I needed the brownies, right? Just there's times you need brownies. Yeah. But now my body's bloated. I don't feel good. And now I'm like, okay, I need my protein shakes. Like now I'm ready because I'm like, I don't like how it makes me feel. So it's almost like a mechanism that stops you before you go in too deep because your body's like, no, I want to be healthy. I don't like how this feels, which is awesome.
Yeah. But it also too, I think, you know, I'm really passionate about right now is getting women to understand that it's like all or nothing usually means nothing. And I can look back at like my dieting days and it was like, oh, I'm all in, I am hardcore, da, 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 da. And then I lose my shit and then be like, what the hell effect? Like, I'm just going to eat whatever. And it became nothing. Like, then I was like hard on myself and like, oh, I'm so weak, you know, so-and-so IFBB pro is doing it with kids. And like, I'm, you know, like I was comparing myself. And so for me now, the way that I'm doing things, I think macros has really saved me post meal plan stringency, because now it has literally taken the attractiveness to binge like out of the equation, because I can walk in my pantry and I've got Nutter Butters and like vanilla wafers in there that my kids eat. And that I'm like, I don't like, when I was dieting, I could not have any of that stuff in the house. When I was like crazy strict competition dieting with my first coach, I was like, I can't even see it. I can't smell it. I don't want to be around anybody eating it. Now, like my son can pop popcorn and I'm like, I'm okay with like a couple. I'm like, I'm good. Before I would be like, oh my God, I want, you know, and that's all I would think about. I would literally think about food all the time. And now I'm like, oh, it's been like 4 hours I need to eat, I guess. Well, I'm not really hungry and could go another hour. Like I'm good. You know, I don't really like stress and freak out about that stuff anymore.
So tell me a little bit, nice. We're going to wrap this up here soon. We have like 10 minutes left because I want to stay under an hour, but I want to talk about, let me see which question I want to end on. So first of all, give me like a resource for people who want to learn more about macros. Do they need to be working with a coach to do macros? Or like, how do they figure out what macros that they're supposed to do? Like how much protein or whatever, like what would you say? And I want to be hesitant on saying numbers, because if we know our people, I don't want them to be like, oh, well, so-and-so said I need to have this many grams of protein. I want you to give general, because I don't want somebody latching on to a number, you know?
Okay. So, I would say like the biggest resources that and tools that I've used have been like a macro calculator on her website. She's got some great resources. I love her blog. She's got some great stuff. I pick and choose from things that I feel work well for my clients, work well for like my mission, my strategy with what I'm doing with my clients. So I've used some of her like macro calculators before. I work with my clients and it's very much based on their goals. So, you know, there's going to be different numbers based on what their goals are. but you don't have to. You don't have to work with a coach with that. It's going to be a lot of playing around. And I say, find a macro calculator. You can probably find one on Dr. Sarah Solomon's website. You can find one on the if it fits your macros website. I think it's IFIIM. Right? Is that right?
Yeah.
.com. I think they have a macro calculator. I'm trying to think of some other resources, but basically you'll go in there, you'll plug your numbers in, it's going to want to know your activity level, your goals and whatnot, and it'll spit out a number. It'll tell you how many calories you should be eating. I have a really in-depth sort of calculation that I use for my clients because I work with them and I program for them one-on-one. So it's a little bit different. I think I kind of pulled from both sites to make something that works. But when you're very first starting, just start with one of those calculators, try it out. Don't give it just a week and be like, oh, it's not working. Like you got to let your body, give your body some time to adapt, time to catch up, give it at least 2 weeks, at least 10 grams here or there. But it's going to take a little bit of trial and error. I have some clients that really love high fat. So I've toyed with ketogenic style diets, which is really, really high fat, low carbs. And it works amazing. I have one client who's a veterinarian. She's like, this is fabulous for me. So it's just playing with it. If you find that you really enjoy carbohydrates, toy around with your numbers so that your carbohydrates are maybe a little bit higher and your fats are lower, but you can't have them both high. And that's where fat gain happens. That's where, body composition starts to come into play and changing up. So those are some good basic tools, but I'd say give it 2 weeks, test it out. Play around with it. Use MyFitnessPal. I use that religiously. They have a huge database of foods that are in there for you to track your macros, get familiar with that app. And there's a little bit of a learning curve. So be patient with yourself on that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to come back to the giveaways that you're giving. And I also want to let everybody know where to find you. So tell me your website. I know you have a Facebook group. Okay. Tell us where to find you.
Yes. So my blog is livingthegoddesslife.com. Lots of great resources. You can find, of course, my Facebook page and Instagram and YouTube and stuff through there too. I've got workouts and recipes and mindset stuff on there. And then my Facebook group that I have, it's just a little private community. It's a free private Facebook group. I try to post in there every day, a little something. It's the Goddess Body Project with Diane Flores. And it's just kind of my mission to get girls to understand, it's not just about diet and exercise, the Goddess Body Project, the project of working on yourself. It's like a holistic, it's everything. It's everything between the ears as well as what you put in your mouth and what you sweat, like what you do with your body.
I love that so much. So awesome. So the Better Method girls who are in my group are going to get your fast food sexy body guide. If anybody's watching the recording, they can go into your group and they can just message you and say, hey, I found you on this webinar, and you can give them the info to get that fast food sexy body. Awesome. And again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give my info real quick in case people don't know who I am. Who knows? Maybe somebody doesn't know who Camy Kennedy is. So if they don't know, you can find me at camykennedy.com. My Facebook group is Rule Breaker Lifestyle. Thank you so much for being on, Diane. This is awesome. We totally vibe. We totally have the same thing. And I know, just have a feeling we're going to do something in person at some point together. Even though I'm in North Carolina and you're in California.
I think so.
I feel like it's going to happen.
I think we should do a podcast.
Amen, sister. I'm already vibing all over this. It's already right there. I want to do it. So thank you everybody who tuned in live. Yeah. You guys are awesome. We appreciate you so much. And if you're watching the replay, thank you again too. We hope to see you in our Facebook groups and we love you guys. All right. See ya.
Bye, Camy.